Hi, welcome to the Board Game Network. I'm going to be explaining how to play this game called Power Grid. It's been out for several years. There's some expansions for it. They actually sell other boards that you can have a different board with the same game. And this board actually has another side to it, so you get to pick which side you want to play with. It's put out by Rio Grande Games. You are actually building power plants. Each player represents a power company which works to supply electricity to cities. During the game, each player buys power plants at auction, buys resources to produce electricity in those power plants, and builds a network of cities to supply with electricity from his power plants. In the end, the player who supplies the most cities with power wins the game. This game plays 2 to 6 players in about 2 hours. 12 and up is what it's saying. Okay, I've got the board set up for us, so each player gets a color. They get 50 electro. They are going to take one of their houses and put it on the turn order track. They're going to take one of their houses and put it over here to keep track of how many cities they own. And you are going to, it suggests you use one area of the board per player. I've got this set for 5 players, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So since there are 6 areas and each area has 7 cities, so they're evenly balanced, I have just taken the 6th player, the black, and put houses across one area, so that area is off limits. It helps you remember that, hey, we're not playing with purple today. So that's how you get started. You are going to look through these cards and put 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in this exact pattern. These are the present market. This is the future market here. These are not available for purchase yet. These ones are available. You are going to take the step 3 card, put it under the shuffled deck. You're going to take the 13 card and put it on top of the deck. So you know 13 is the next one to come up. You are going to take coal and oil and garbage and uranium and lay them out exactly the way they are here. It explains in the setup in the rule book exactly where that goes. And you are ready to play. You've got a quick reference right here that does a great job of explaining to you and reminding you what the phases are. And on the back it tells you how much you get paid for powering cities. So step 1 is determine the turn order. Well, at the beginning of the game, normally you determine turn order based on the number of cities you own. And we don't own any cities. Therefore, we just have to randomize, and so you can pick them at random, or you know, you could, let's get them on the turn order track, just drop them out and go, okay, that's number 1, this one's 2, this one's 3, this one's 4, and this one's 5. Something, some way of randomizing, get a turn order to start. You are going to buy power plants, and you do this in player order. There's some things that happen in player order, some things that happen in reverse player order, but this game generally benefits those who are behind in the game. So it's a disadvantage to buy the power plant early, and it's more of an advantage to be later. So you do this in player order, and each round you may buy only 1 power plant. So the power plants that are available are these top 4, and they are not actually, you don't purchase them, you actually bid for them. And this is the starting bid minimum. You can bid more than that, but that's the minimum. And so I have 50 electro, and so 3, 4, 5, or 6, and I look at this, and this says for 2 oil. So here's oil down here. You have to buy resources to power this. I can power 1 city. Okay, for 2 coal I can power a city, and this one's a hybrid. This says I can use either coal or oil, 2 of coal, 2 of oil, or 1 of each to power a city. So this one's more flexible. So I can buy the cheaper resource to power this one, whereas this one I'm fixed on my resource. This one says I can use 1 garbage to power a city. Now at the beginning of the game you'll notice garbage is up here on the 7, so garbage is actually expensive, whereas I can buy coal pretty cheap. Coal is available for 1 electro per coal, whereas garbage costs 7. But again, it costs you 2 of these and only 1 of those. So there's trade-offs, and in the long run it may be cheaper to buy garbage because you're going to have more people, more power plants. You look at these and there's a lot of power plants that want coal or oil and not very many that want garbage. So whatever. And so I'm going to say, well, I'll bid 4 for this one. Okay? And then the person to the left says, well, yeah, I'll pass. The person is like, oh, you know, I'll bid 5. I like that one. And I'll pass. And it comes back to me. Once anybody passes, they're out for the rest of the bidding on that power plant. Cannot come back in. And then I have to decide, okay, am I going to beat the 5 or I'm going to just... So let's say I pass. So this person buys this for 5. They turn in their electro to the banker and get 45 back. Okay, now since that person bought a power plant, they cannot no longer participate in any more purchases of power plants for this turn. You only get 1 power plant per turn max. Okay, so since one's missing, I now rearrange these and I put them in numeric order. So I'm going to flip this one up, and that's a 13. We knew that. You always put the cheapest ones on the top row, the more expensive ones on the bottom row. And so since I did not get my bid, I get to go bid another one. So that may have been something that I wanted. This one is 3 oil, but it powers 2 cities. I may want that one. Like, I'm going to bid 7 for that one, and then they'll pass. And so I pay 7 for this one. And so I turn in my electro and get change. This once again moves down. I flip up a random one. This one costs 36. So that one's going to be very expensive to buy at the beginning of the game. And you can't get to it anyway because it's in the future market. But it's 3 oil, but it powers 7 cities. Wow. Okay. The more expensive ones power more cities or have cheaper resources. Okay, so that happens until everybody in the game has been able to purchase a power plant, and you get to the last player. We've got 5 players, so let's just say, and you have to buy at the beginning, the first round, you have to buy a power plant. So let's continue on until we get to the last player. Continue to rearrange these in numeric order. And then now it's the last player. Now we're doing these in this order, right? Purple went first, blue, yellow, red, and green. Now I didn't really do that in that order, did I? I should have. So green should have been the first one, or the last one. So let's say we did it in this order. Green's the last player, and he did not outbid somebody else in the game, or whoever is the last one that did not outbid somebody that still gets a power plant. They can pick one across here and bid the minimum, because nobody can outbid them because they already have power plants. So they get the choice and they're like, you know what, I'll just pay 10 for this one, and nobody can outbid them. So that one goes up, and then there we are, and we are done with buying power plants phase 2. We go into phase 3, which you buy raw materials, and you're going to buy raw materials based on the power plant you have. You need a certain kind of power, certain kind of raw materials for your power plant, and your power plant is can only store your kind of raw materials on it. Okay, this happens in reverse player order. So reverse player order disadvantages the earlier player because they're ahead. You are limited to 3 power plants. So if you ever get over 3, you have to discard power plants. And if you do that, you can rearrange resources at any time, move them from one power plant to another, especially when you discard. But the power plant that you put the resources on has to use that kind of power. And a power plant can support up to double what it costs in resources, or what it can use in resources. This can use 2 coal, so this one can actually store 4 coal on it. Now at this point, once we've bought power plants, this is a first turn thing only. At the very beginning of the game, we're going to rearrange the starting order, and you rearrange it based on who has the most expensive power plants. So green bought a 10, so green is going to be first, and 7 is yellow, 5 is blue, 4 is purple, and 3 is red. So we rearranged the play order for phase 3, right before phase 3 of the purchasing. This is first turn only. From now on, phase 1 is going to determine the turn order for the whole turn. So happen in reverse player order, buying raw materials. So red is going to go first, and red's going to say, well, I need oil, and oil is 3 per oil. He needs 2 of them, so that costs 6. So he could buy 2, he could buy 3, he could buy 4. This can store up to 4, remember? And he may be looking ahead and say, well, this is going to get more expensive, looking around to see what this guy over here, and he needs oil. This guy could use oil. I don't know, it may be getting more expensive, so he might buy extra this turn. Let's just say he bought 2, he puts those on his power plant. And then purple then goes, and he needs coal, so his coal is only going to cost 1. He probably wants to buy a little bit extra, so he has 1 that costs 2 here, and then 3 that cost 1, so 5. He would be paying 5 electro for his. And then blue goes, yellow goes, green goes. Everybody buys the kind that they need for their power plant. Then you go into the building phase, phase 4, and this happens in reverse player order. So red gets to go, and red says, well, you know what, I can power 1 city, so I should buy at least 1 city. And you don't have to buy at the very beginning of the game if you don't want to. This keeps track of cities, and then your turn order is based on how many cities you have, right? So if you don't buy one, that puts you later in the turn order. So that is a legitimate thing to do, maybe. But at the beginning of the game, you can just pick any city you want out here on the board. All cities cost 10 at this point, and you'll notice there's connecting costs to connect cities. So if you build here and then want to connect over here to this city, you have to pay the connecting cost. You can, once you've started the game, all of your other ones have to connect to ones that are already on the board for you, for your color. So let's say, you know what, and there's definitely an advantage to certain parts of the board, because if you look at these connecting costs, like here's a 4, here's a 4, here's a 6, these are cheaper connecting costs, whereas this was 21, you know, 18. This is expensive down here, the connecting cost, but then here's 2s, 4s, but then more people will probably want to be in those cheaper ones, so there's less competition in the other ones. And there are sometimes you even find free ones. Here's a free one from Pittsburgh to Essen, or Duisburg, I guess, whatever this is, to Essen. And you definitely don't want to block yourself into a corner, because if I put mine in Duisburg and then purple comes along and puts theirs in Essen, I can't get out of there. It's hard to get out of there. So you want to build so you can go backwards toward the edge instead of building starting from the edge and trying to go out, because you may get blocked. So let's just say we took that one for no reason. pay 10, and then it goes to, and then he can buy as much as he wants as long as he has enough money for it. He could buy another one, but the next one costs 10 for the city plus any connecting costs, and you can try to connect any way you want to. This one would be cheaper. This one's only 14, 10 here, 4 here. And so that would be 14 plus 10 is 24, so he would owe 24. Okay, so he could buy 2. And then whatever you buy, you need to immediately move your tracker here for how many cities you have. So most people are going to buy 1 or maybe 2 at the beginning of the game and do it in reverse order again. Then you go into bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is where you actually make money at this. If at any point in phase 4 here, this doesn't happen very often, you just have to remember it. If in phase 4, if there's a power plant that's out here in the market that is less than or equal to the number of cities somebody owns, then you discard that power plant and do a replacement. So that means that essentially a power plant is they're becoming too cheap for the people, because they're buying more and more cities. They need the more expensive power plants to support them. So if anybody got up to 6 cities while this one's still out, you discard that one and flip a new one. If there are 7 cities, then you go to step 2. So if anybody owns 7 cities, you actually go to step 2. There's 3 steps in this game, and they happen based on how many cities are purchased. And then when you go to step 2, you remove the lowest power plant from the game. So you take whatever the cheapest one is, take it out, and then replace it. Okay, so that's your phase 4. And then going into phase 5 with the bureaucracy, that's where you make the money. This happens in player order. And you decide at this point how many power plants or how many cities you want to power with your power plant. So you do not have to power all the cities. You can. So in other words, let's say, I'm going to have, I didn't put my resources on here, but I'm going to have 2 coal here, and it can power 2 cities. Well, but if I only own 1 city, then, if I only bought 1 city, then I'm only going to power 1 city. If I bought 2 cities, then I can power 2 cities. If I bought 3 cities, I can only power 2 of them. So I'm going to say, well, I'm going to power 2. There's no reason not to power as many as you can power if you pay for it. But there may be a reason not to power as many as you can power if, let's say you can only, let's say I've got 2 cards here, and I have the resources to power both of them. Here's a 2 and here's a 2. This one costs 3 to power 2 cities. This one costs 2 to power 2 cities, right? So this one's a better card. But let's say I only have 3 out. Okay, I look at the cost of what the resources cost me, and I can only power 3 cities possible, but I'm paying enough to power 4 because I can't pay half. So I would have to either choose to power 2 cities or 3 cities, even though I'm using 5 coal. So I look at my payments on here, and for 3 cities I make 44. For 2 cities I make 33. So the difference between powering 2 and powering 3 is 11. Well, I need to look to see how much coal is worth, and at this point coal cost me 9 to do 2 cities. If it bumps up there, it's 12, but the difference was only 11, right, between powering 3 or powering 2. So I may not want to use this power plant. I may want to only say I'm powering 2, and when you use a power plant and the resources go back to the pool, and then you'd say, well, I'm powering 2, and then you get 33 electro from the bank. Or if I powered 3, you would get 44 from the bank. You'll notice that 0 is worth 10. So if you can't power anything, you still get 10 electro. Okay, that is getting money, and then everybody gets their money for how many cities they power. And then in step 1 and 2, you take the highest power plant and put it under the deck, because that's too expensive. You can't afford these yet anyway. Usually the most expensive one. I should have 8 back out here, so let's flip the way it should be. Okay, I'm going to take the most expensive one, put it under the deck, and flip a new one. That allows me to get the cycle through that deck faster, get to the cheaper ones that we need in step 1 and step 2. Once you get to step 3, you're going to actually remove the cheapest power plant, because that's too cheap usually. And then you restock the raw materials. So a bunch of this raw material is going to be bought, and the way you restock is you look at the back page here of your rule page, and you look at the number of players. We've got 5 players. We are in step 1 at this point. So step 1, you get you're going to resupply 5 coal. Well, I didn't pull all the coal back from everybody. And if you don't have enough coal, then you can't put it out here. So you can resupply up to 5 coal, 4 oil, max, and you put it on the oil. There's 2, 3, 4. 3 garbage. So you'll notice nobody bought garbage that turn, so garbage is getting cheaper then. So this one here is looking more promising, right? As far as, wow, this is getting cheaper, nobody else is using it. And then I put 2 uranium out, which there's no uranium. Well, there's uranium in the future market there. And you'll notice these started way up here. Super expensive, but they'll gradually be coming down. But you can only put 1 uranium on each price there. So the price will get cheaper on uranium, especially since there's not as much uranium power plants early in the game there. Remember, if anybody gets to 7, you go to step 2, and then you are discarding. You're still discarding the most expensive one off of here. But what happens in step 2 is the second city becomes available. So you'll notice there's a 10, a 15, and a 20 on each city. The 10 is only available for step 1, but once you get to step 2, the 15 becomes available. So if somebody's on the 10, then somebody else can come along and purchase the 15. The 20 is not available in step 1 or step 2. It is available in step 3. So that opens up to have 3 people in each city. And you can skip over cities when you're building. It's expensive to do, but let's say in step 1, I'm here and I want to get to here. Somebody already has the 10. I can pay the connecting cost here. I can pay the connecting cost here, and then pay the 10 here to get from there to there, skipping over that spot. That's expensive, 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 but you can do it. Step 3 comes in when you get to that step 3 card that you placed on the bottom of the deck. And remember, according to your resupply, there's a step 1 column, a step 2 column, a step 3 column. So whichever step you are in, it's going to resupply differently of your resources. And then step 3 during phase 2, if it's during phase 2 that you hit step 3, and phase 2 is when you're buying power plants. So if you're buying power plants over here, you run into step 3, what you do is you put the step 3 card out in the future market. Let's find my step 3 card. So you know you're pulling those off and then putting a new one. So you actually put the step 3 onto the future market as the highest card there. Then you shuffle the power plant deck because you've been putting cards underneath there. You're going to reshuffle it so they're randomized and they're not in the order you stuck them there. And when the auction is done, you are going to remove the step 3 card and the cheapest power plant. Those are going to slide over, and then everything is part of the current market. So you can now purchase all 6 instead of just the ones on the front row. If the step 3 happens during phase 4, which is when you're building, when you are building cities out here, remember that if you ever get to where somebody has enough cities as whatever the cheapest one is, that one goes away and it gets resupplied. So it is possible to hit your step 3 during that phase. If that happens, or in step 5, which is your bureaucracy phase, all you do is you reshuffle the deck and you remove the smallest power plant off of the market, and then you have only 6 again, and all 6 are available in the market. The winner is the person who can supply the most cities. So it's not the person who owns them. You're going to have down here, a variety of people having a certain number of cities. It's not who has the most cities. The game ends when somebody gets to 17 or more. But it's not the person who has the most cities, it's who can power the most cities. So you're going to have all your power plants out here. And that last round, when the game is getting ready to end and you're scoring using your bureaucracy phase 5, you are going to be asked how many can you power so that you get paid, right? But whoever can power the most is going to be the winner. If there's a tie on who can power the most, then it's based on money to break the tie. And then if there's still a tie, then it's the most number of cities. And you want to check the exceptions. There are a bunch of exceptions in here based on the number of players. So if you're playing 2 players, there's some changes to the rules. 3 players, there's a few changes to the rules. 4 players, 5, 6. So for example, for 5 players, the game ends when one player gets to 15 instead of 17. So just a simple change to that, but for 5 players. 4 players, you remove some power plants from the deck to start, a few things like that. So not very much. So that's how you play power plant. It's a great game. We've played it several times in our family. And there's other expansions. If you like this one, we have one called Factory Manager, which is essentially, it's a very similar genre. It's about power plants and stuff like that, but it plays different. So it works different, same genre. So make sure you tune into all of our videos here at the Board Game Network. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Up thumb us, or like us on Facebook.